As a kid, all a nigga wanna have was a Burberry scarf and $3 in my pocket. Instead I got beat with a switch, but I don't give a fuck, but it's on my body. Scars all up on me, but I run around from everybody. Life lesson learned, I better learn from this bitch, nobody. She pushed me around, she didn't give no motherfucks about it. She broke my heart 3 times, but I ain't getting...
As a Steelers fan, this is the most excited and most pumped up I've ever been for an NFL season. Because the Steelers have had a lot of criticism, a lot of critics, a lot of doubters. A lot of people say that the Steelers' reign of success is about to end. You see, a lot of people keep saying that the Steelers are old. They don't have enough weapons. So when we look at the offense and we look at the offensive line, a lot of people say this offensive line is going to regress because it's old. Just because you're old doesn't mean you're going to be terrible. As we see with the New England Patriots, they take players who are past their prime and washed up and are old and get the most out of them. You want to know why? Because it's not all about talent all the time like people make it out to be. You see, the Steelers' offensive line, they basically have had the same stars on the offensive line for the last couple of seasons, which means they have a lot of chemistry and they're really good when it comes to communication, which is two of the most important things when it comes to having a good offensive line. You got to have a good center, which the Steelers still have with one of the Pouncey brothers. And they have good communication, which is another important thing when it comes to pass blocking as well. And also, the Steelers were one of the best offensive lines in the NFL last season. So, the Steelers' offensive line, despite the fact that it may be old, considering to some people's standards, is still going to be top 10, regardless. Because having a good offensive line isn't strictly based on talent. It's about communication. And it's about chemistry. And it's about having a good football IQ and a good knowledge of the game. Where to go, who to block, when to pull, things like that. So the Steelers still have a top 10 offensive line heading into this season. Then people say the Steelers don't have enough weapons on offense. So what about Deontay Johnson? Deontay Johnson, if you watched the Pittsburgh Steelers last season, you would know that Deontay Johnson was the offensive MVP for the Steelers offense last season. He was the best player that the Steelers had on offense as a rookie, and he played injured. And if Deontay Johnson was able to have that much success last season with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges throwing him the football, imagine what he's going to be able to do with Ben Roethlisberger coming back, who we will get into shortly. Then what about James Washington? James Washington led the Pittsburgh Steelers in receiving yards last year. James Washington made some really clutch plays and some really big plays for the Steelers down the stretch of some very marquee games. What about Eric Ebron? The last time Eric Ebron played with a legitimate quarterback in 2018 with Andrew Luck, he was all-pro. Yeah, he didn't do that much last season with the Indianapolis Colts, but that's because he got held back by Jacoby Brissett. What about the halfbacks? I know James Conner is like a fragile piece of glass. Every time he gets touched, he goes down for injury. But if he's able to stay fully healthy, he's a Pro Bowl caliber halfback, without a doubt. And not just that, you still got Benny Snell, who was a rookie last season. He ended up 2019 as the best halfback on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster behind James Conner. Then you still got Jalen Samuels. You pick up the rookie out of Maryland, Anthony McFarland. So the Steelers have more than enough depth at running back. Now, the biggest question when it comes to the Steelers is Juju Smith-Schuster and Ben Roethlisberger. Is Juju Smith-Schuster going to be able to bounce back from that season that he had last year, which was a really big disappointment? Not just because he wasn't able to produce all that much on the field, but because he had a pretty big amount of games that he missed last season due to injuries. So with Ben Roethlisberger coming back, is Ben Roethlisberger even going to be the same quarterback to give Juju Smith-Schuster a chance to bounce back? Because Juju Smith-Schuster is in the contract year. He's going to get paid. A lot of people don't know that, but Juju Smith-Schuster could leave Pittsburgh after this season. And you see, the thing with Ben Roethlisberger is that a lot of people are making a lot of assumptions. A lot of people keep saying Ben Roethlisberger is going to regress. Who the hell are you to say that Ben Roethlisberger is going to regress? Are you a doctor? Do you have a PhD? Did you graduate from Harvard Medical School? I didn't know that we had a lot of people on ESPN and a lot of people on Fox Sports and a lot of people on YouTube that graduated college with medical degrees. You can't predict when a player is going to regress. It just happens. People have been saying that Tom Brady has been going to fall off a cliff for like the last 4 or 5 years. People have been saying that Drew Brees is going to regress. People have been saying that Aaron Rodgers is going to regress. And although those guys have regressed a little bit, they have regressed to the point that they're not going to be good at starting at all. You see, regression isn't something that you can predict. It just happens. So a lot of people are making these assumptions that Ben Roethlisberger is going to regress based on his injury, which was a season-ending elbow injury. But we don't know if Ben Roethlisberger is going to just be absolute garbage, which I doubt. Even if Ben Roethlisberger does regress, he can't be no worse than what Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges were last season. So, for all you guys that's out there saying Ben Roethlisberger is washed up, Ben Roethlisberger is going to regress, you're only saying that because you haven't seen Ben Roethlisberger play. How do you know Ben Roethlisberger is regressed? I know he struggled against New England, but the Steelers always struggled against New England. That was one of the best defenses in the NFL last season. Who didn't struggle against the New England Patriots? Tell me, who didn't struggle against the New England Patriots? Tell me one team that just went into New England and just absolutely dotted them up. Absolutely just terrorized them. It's only a handful of teams that actually manhandled New England last year and destroyed their defense. And one of those teams were the Baltimore Ravens. Not a lot of teams had a lot of success throwing the football and had a lot of success on offense against the New England Patriots. So a lot of you guys keep saying that Ben Roethlisberger fell off because, his first 2 games last season weren't all that great. But that doesn't mean he fell off. Regression is not something that you can predict. It just happens. Then, not to mention, the Steelers still have one of the best defenses in the NFL. Seems like a lot of people forget the Steelers had 3 All-Pros on defense last year. You got T.J. Watt, who should have won Defensive Player of the Year last year. I don't understand why Stephon Gilmore won Defensive Player of the Year last year, but hey, I'm not the one who decides who wins the awards. You still got T.J. Watt, one of the best defensive players in the NFL. Looking to become one of the highest paid players in the NFL on the defensive side of football. You got Cam Hayward, who is one of the more versatile players in the NFL. He can play defensive end and he can play interior defensive line as well. He's going to be a free agent. He's coming up on a contract year. You got Meek Fitzpatrick, who when he came, turned around that Pittsburgh Steelers defense after he got traded from the Miami Dolphins to the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got Terrell Edmonds, who has been really solid the last couple of seasons. Last season, 2019, was Terrell Edmonds' best year as a pro. You got Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, who's one of the best 1-2 punchers at the cornerback position. Both of those guys are top 15 corners. You got a really good linebacker unit led by Devin Bush. You got one of the best defensive lines in the NFL, on top of having one of the best secondaries in the NFL. Then on top of that, a lot of people have a lot of criticism to say about Mike Tomlin, but we don't like to give Mike Tomlin the credit that was deserved last season, because Mike Tomlin was the best coach in the NFL. You see, a lot of people just look at how good a team is going to be based on their quarterback, but they don't look at everything else. They don't look at how good of a coach they have. A lot of people who watch football don't realize how much having a good coach matters. It doesn't matter how good of a quarterback you have if you have a bad coach. Mike Tomlin was the best coach in the NFL last year. He went 8-8 with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges as his starting quarterbacks. A lot of teams can't even win 8 games with their starting quarterbacks. Matt Patricia. A lot of teams can't even win 6 games with their starting quarterback. So tell me this. Ben Roethlisberger coming back. Do you think he's going to be an upgrade from Mason Rudolph or Devlin Hodges or not? Let me know. Because it seems like a lot of people don't think that. You see, I ask people, they be like, oh, Ben Roethlisberger coming back, it's going to be all that big of an upgrade. So you're telling me that the Steelers offense, which ranked in the bottom of the NFL in every statistical category on an offense, is going to be significantly better without Ben Roethlisberger? Then they say, oh, I'm not saying that, JT. I'm just saying that we were last in every single stat on offense. We couldn't score in the red zone. Chris Boswell was our best scoring machine that we had on offense. Chris Boswell was our second best player on offense, and he doesn't even play offense. He is a field goal kicker. So, a lot of people under this narrative that the Steelers' success is finally going to end now. A lot of people are saying that the Steelers are going to have their first losing season in nearly 2 decades. And it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because this isn't a 7-9 team, and it dang sure isn't an 8-8 team. So, I mean, a lot of people, when you're so successful and you're so dominant for a long period of time, people like to, when something small happens or when you face a little bit of adversity that you got to overcome, people like to say that because of that adversity, you're not going to be able to weather the storm and you're going to fall off. It's the same thing with Drake. It's the same thing with companies like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. When those companies have a little bit of a flunk and, they have a little bit of a drought, a lot of people like to predict and say, oh, it's the end of Apple. It's the end of Microsoft. It's the end of Amazon. People just hate dominance. People hate People hate success. People hate when you're successful for a long period of time. You see, people love to see you become successful, but people don't like to see you remain successful. And that's the thing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You see, the same thing with the Pittsburgh Steelers is the same narrative that people have about the New England Patriots. They're old, they're washed up, and they don't have what it takes because they've been successful for so long. Everybody says, you know what, eventually it has to come to an end. And just like the thing when it comes to Ben Roethlisberger's regression, how do you know if it's going to come to an end? How do you know Ben Roethlisberger is going to regress? You don't know that. You're not a doctor. You don't have a PhD in medicine. You didn't graduate from Harvard Medical School or any medical school like that. So, I mean, what makes you qualified to think that you can predict when somebody's going to regress? That's a prediction. That's not something that can actually happen. You can't predict when somebody's going to regress. It just happens. We've been saying that about Tom Brady for how many years now? But you see, the Steelers this season, at worst, should be 10-6. At worst, 10-6. Better, 12-4. So my expectation for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year is 10-6 and to make it to the playoffs. I don't know about the rest of everybody else, but I'm not counting out the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're one of the best franchises in the NFL for a reason. Every franchise that's successful in the NFL, or not just that, anybody that's successful at life has to be able to overcome some adversity, has to be able to overcome some road bumps, and I think that the Steelers are going to be able to do that this upcoming season in 2020.